Hey, hello folks, checking you're running. Sam here, Really Love Guitars, and back again with the third of Les's 3. This one is the Pacifica, Yamaha Pacifica H, something H, and this is brand new. It's a twin humbucker. Let's just get this up. Nice clean sound. Nice positive direct tone, fully responsive tone control. I find it quite hard to find one that seems to work in a nice linear fashion all the way. Maybe that's what the linear pots are supposed to do. God, that's a bit grungy. Let's just see if we have actually got this in tune a minute. Quite thick, but luckily we have a coil tap. Coil tap. Wow, this is doing some weird things. It's really weird. I'm not sure this little amp can actually handle these pickups. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, it seems to be struggling a bit and getting a bit jumbled up on itself. But it's nice guitar, brand new Pacifica H with two humbuckers and a coil split tap. Somebody's going to tell me they mean two different things, but it just switches off one and switches off the other. And oh god, sorry, my phone is going to be doing this business. Found it in my pocket. It goes over here, switches it off. We are, come on, off airplane mode. Right, anyway, yes, so sorry about that little distraction. So we have this one to set up, and I'm going to again do it on 9s because the objective here, whatever, is to get this as light as possible for Les to learn on, because he's new to the world of guitaring. So what have we got? We have got a very pretty sunburst, transparent kind of clear sunburst thing with a strung through the body, hard-tailed guitar. It has a cover here for the access to the tone and volume. It's got a single volume, single tone, three-way switch, two humbuckers. One or both, I don't know. One of them switchable probably. Actually, I'm assuming it's only one, but it could be two. Anyway, I haven't read the specs. Obviously, we've got a nice maple neck. Nothing too unusual about it. These Yamaha Pacificas are quite square. They're nice, thick, full-weight bodies, but they're quite square. It's a little bit sharp-edged for my liking, and I'm not massively turned on by the headstock shape, but it's a really good quality guitar, and it's not that expensive, I don't think. You've got quite a sharp sort of quite sharp and square lines, square lines, straight lines, green lines. Anyway, so metal knobs here, a scratch plate which is straight on the body. There's no cavity underneath it. So what have we got in terms of playability? What's my impression of it? Actually, I was thinking this is new. Everything's pretty new. Well, everything's brand new on it. There is a blemish on the side here. There's a dent in the lacquer, which isn't too bad. But it's a little imperfection. And I was thinking that we'd probably get away with not fret leveling this. I kind of assumed that because it was new, but then I played somewhere up here. Yeah, there we go. We can't get a tone and a half on this bend, which isn't brilliant for a guitar like this. So we're choking out mainly on the top string, the E. So it's a little bit disappointing. I'll check the action because it may be, for all I know, it may be a bit lower than I'd normally have it, in which case that would probably sort of solve it without fret leveling. But we're definitely choking out pretty early actually. We're getting about semitone out of it. Yeah, no tone. We're losing it after a tone. So we currently have 1.5, 1.6 on the high E. Well, actually, yeah, we are a tad on the low side. Or maybe we'll get away with it. We've got. I'm going to write it down, like as I always do. It makes sense to write it down. We have 1.5, 1.5. No, this would be honest. Low E, 1.6 millimeters, which is pretty good. High E. What did I say now? Already forgotten. High E. Wow. I'd say that's 0.75, not 0.75 millimeters. So it's pretty low. So I think we may solve that problem straight off. Just for my own peace of mind, let's raise that up a tiny fraction. What I'm noticing here is these little saddles are high up on their stilts. Now the only way to there isn't really a way to do anything. I was going to say, you know, if they wanted that to come down so that they aren't so high up on the stilts, which isn't such a bad thing, but it does increase the brake angle over there. But that's again not such a problem because it's not a tremolo. Anyway, so I don't think it needs anything doing to it. But if it was really important, then really you have to get into the land of shaving this away to lower it so there's a big gap and you can take these down. But I don't think it's really that much of an issue. Oh, these are heavy strings. Okay, that's fine. I'm pleased with that. That little tweak on the action has saved the day, and we don't have to. I don't think we have to fret level it, which is good. It saves some money there for Les anyway. First of all, so let's just see. We've got 1 point. I'll say actually I'll take it back. It's 1 point. It's about 1.3 actually. It's pretty low, which is nice. I'm going to put on my ultrasonic glasses so I can see a bit better up close at these readings. So we've got 1.3 there. We've got, wow, 1.2. We're heading downwards. Which isn't so bad. I'm just going to raise it up. Raise it up a little fraction. Just a tiny bit. I never use this side of it. Why don't I use this side? 0.3, 0.4. Why? No. Why don't I? Because it's in, that one's in inches, that's why. 1.25, 1.5. I should get used to using the edges, shouldn't I? Is it easier to see? Me, yes and no. I still have to push these strings out of the way to see. And it goes up in 0.25 chunks anyway, so. Okay, one point. I can't guess it that way. I'm going to go back to the actual measuring thing. I knew there was a reason. Right, that's gone up a bit too much. Bring that back in a tiny fraction. Okay, this one is over 1.5, so we'll dial that one back in a bit. When you're doing adjustments on the saddle, try and make sure that it doesn't end up standing on one stilt and not the other. So try and balance the legs together. So if you turn one way, turn the other way, so that they both take up a similar amount of strain on either side. Okay, we're going down. 1.5, take that down a bit too. Okay, wrong one. Okay, I like that so far. Now we've gone out of tune because I have changed all those. So let me just get a quick tone off there. Looking good, feeling good. Okay, that's that first bit straight into it. Next part is to look at the relief, see what we've got in the neck. Funnily enough, interestingly, I just found out on for Facebook earlier on, some of you may have seen that when I got when I opened up the old ancient 1950s case to work on the, not the Hohner, but the Hohner stroke Antoria archtop, you may have seen that I found this bunch of strange occult tarot cards in the little pocket, because I saw the pocket and thought, oh, that was worth having a check, see if there's a little surprise in there, and indeed there is. And I looked at these things and I looked through them, and there's lots of sort of scary, sort of African-y, sort of styly, magic-y pictures, and things like zombie. Anyway, I looked through it, and it all put me in mind of Live and Let Die. You know, the that James Bond film set in what do you call it, New Orleans, and with kind of the voodoo, forgotten the name of the woman, Hocus Pocus. Anyway, so it all put me in mind of that, and so anyway, somebody made a comment and asked me what deck of cards, and I went and had a look on Google because I didn't know what deck it was, and it turns out to be the New Orleans voodoo set. So there you go. Surprise little extra gift with my not Hofner but Antoria archtop guitar. So that's one of the fun things that turns up when you do this sort of thing, and I showed it to Malcolm earlier on. He was quite surprised to see it. So anyone wants a free set of New Orleans voodoo cards, please let me know, and I'll send you them, because I don't go for that sort of thing. Right, so coupling the first fret like and holding on the last one and having a little poke. Well, first of all, we can say, oh, there is some space, because if there wasn't, that wouldn't make that noise, and I can see the gap, and it's probably just about enough. I'd say it's about 0.2 as always. A bit more on, it feels like it's a bit more on the treble side than the bass side, but it's often an optical illusion. But it's enough, although what we don't know is whether it's going to be as much when I come to put on the next set of strings, which is a lighter gauge. So things looking good. I've done an adjustment to the action here. We've got as low as I'm happy to go, and it's ironed out. We've got it nice and low. It was a bit too low on the top E, and now we've got rid of any choking problems on the bends. The next thing now is really to just take care of the nut slots. They look pretty good, but we don't know exactly. What have I got here? I've got a load of 11s, and I've got Hellfire, my last set of... Ooh, hey, ooh, hey, ooh. Hang on a minute now. I was going to say my last set of 9s, and I need some to take away with me on my honeymoon. Is there any more in here? No, there's 10s in there. Yikes. Well, I have got a set here. Thankfully, it's a complete... It was a set minus a B, but thanks to the free extra... Did I say a B? What am I talking about? What am I saying? What have we got? Oh, hang on, what have I got here? I've got 11 and a 9. 11, 9, 16. Come on, you're supposed to tell me what the gauges are. Am I losing my mind? I thought it already said on there. 11, 9, 11, 9, 11, 16. 9, 11, 16. Just hold on a minute, let's check. Why doesn't this packet tell me? This packet tells me. What sort of packet is this? 911. That's right, 911 16. So there we go. New set, made up from some spares, but thankfully we've got the full set back. And this was hanging around as an incomplete set because of a few breakages previously. Anyway, so we've got free spare set, and I've got the set to take away on my trip. Super. Right. So now, given that I now know what that gauge I'm going to pull up all of my evenings, whatever they call them. I'm losing my words. It's been a long week already. Pull up my nut files, and I'm going to put together the set to match this. So 9s, I want to go bigger each time. So 9s I don't want to touch, and 11s. So the 9, for a 9 I want an 11 to cut with. I don't really want a 10, I've got an 11. There's my number 1. For an 11 I want a 13. There's a 13. For a 16 I want 17 minimum. Actually, I don't think I've got anything else better than that other than into the 20s. So 16, 24 I want a 28ish, something like that. Have I got such a thing? 28. 28, I think I've got 28, yes. Then we got 32, I want a 36. There we got one. And for a 42 I want a 46. There we got it. Right, so there's my set. And it's nice having all of these to choose from, because I can pick a set each time I do this that matches the strings I'm going to use. So now I've got them in order, which is convenient. I'm going to now go and start this process. So have it pretty much to pitch. Let me turn this amp off to see what left of the batteries. And I'm going to go for, again, starting with, now I did the last one at 0.25, so let's go to 0.25 again on this one. And I'm going to take off the E and the A, and I'm going to start with working outwards from the D. And I can see the scale of the gap. Now it's got quite a good nut. It's one of those, probably graphite or something, but it's nice and solid, and it should cut very dependably. And so I can just start working our way at it. Now I'm starting with a bigger gap than the gauge I'm even using, and that's above the gauge of the actual string I'm using. So again, it's an indication that the nut slots on any guitar are always cut for the largest possible gauge. You know, they're anticipating somebody's going to use some heavies in there, and they don't want them to get stuck and not be able to use it with their new guitar, so they're always going to make the nut slot considerably wider than the gauge you're likely to use. Right, we're just on the mark there. Now I'm going to replace the A. A little bit gritty on the tuners there, unfortunately. Not as smooth as I'd like. Quite a bit of room. And here we go with our A38 gauge. You can see I'm cutting whilst tilting backwards, and that's to make sure that the string rises up from the back of the nut and launches itself into the playing length off the front edge of the nut. This thing is just, no, it's just there. Nearly there. So it's been great doing these guitars for Les. I love being able to set guitars up as easy as possible for somebody learning how to play. Some people might argue that, you know, a heavy action you know, forces somebody to develop stronger muscles, and you know, you might argue that that's a really good thing to do, but I'm not sure. I think you could build up to that. I think when you're struggling to learn how to play a difficult first chord, like when people try to learn to play an inevitable and unavoidable bar chord like an F, having a high action is going to make it really hard to learn, and I think it could well be a disincentive to some people. I've heard it is anyway, so not just conjecture. Some people say it's too painful and they end up giving up. So I don't really think there's a really fantastic argument if somebody's new to playing that you start off with a painful action. Now I'm just looking, having done this, I'm looking at the other one. I think I wimped out a little bit early on the other one, so I'm just going backwards a step. Quite often the case, actually. Yeah, you get that first buzz, zing, whatever, and you quit and go, right, I'm done. And there was a little bit more to go. You have to be prepared to wiggle the feeler gauge around a bit to get it to its optimum place. Yep, see, still more. Yeah, so you know, for me, I don't really see a great argument for you know, starting with a heavy action. And of course, if you did persevere, then yes, a heavy action would train you to play anything, and you develop probably stronger muscles. But why go through that? Why not start with something that helps you? I mean, Les left a message on my Facebook earlier on saying something saying like he couldn't wait to play his guitars once I've done them, and he mentioned he's currently playing a Squire Strat that I set up with just an incredibly low action, and he's just saying, you know, you barely have to think about it and it plays the chords for you. Well, great, you know, what's wrong with that? Yeah, and I can't see a really good reason for making it harder rather than easier. So continue to make easy, light playing guitars, and I guess, you know, they're not going to be to everybody's taste all the time, but I like the market that I make them for and set them up for. It's a nice group of people who are of a certain age and have decided what they want, and they know what they want and they're happy to pay to have it like that. And I think it's a niche like any other market niche. Once as long as you know that's who you're aiming for, then you don't chase other parts of markets that just aren't relevant. And I've always been very comfortable saying, if you're somebody, say you're a youngster and your budget is a primary concern for you, and you have to find a guitar, the cheapest guitar, let's say, on the market because your budget's very tight. That's absolutely no problem, but it's very possible that I'm not the supplier, not the best supplier for you, and I'm absolutely happy saying that, because it's much better not to try and sell to somebody who would find one of my guitars an expensive guitar comparative to what they're looking for. So the secret is just don't go after a market that isn't yours. And the other part of it is know which one is. Now I'm going to drop off the top. Oh, well, that's a pain. Sometimes you get that with an old string that's been stressed at this end. Now I'm still going to need to do this, so I'm going to have to replace this. That's going to cost me a string just to do it, but I have a feeling this will be a 10, and I happen to have some spare leftover 10s kicking around up there. But it's just the way it goes. That's what happens when strings get old and tired. Now, it can't be that small. This has to be lying to me. It's not an 8-gauge string, unless this is some weird hybrid set that I've never heard of. Oh well, it's telling me it's a 9, but it's pretty tight for a 9. I think it might be a hybrid with a 9, but I've got a couple of spares anyway, so I'll just put one on and be done with it. Because it's important to get this done. So there we are. Thank you very much, Rotor Sound sets of strings. Without you, I wouldn't be able to do this little bit here. So very good. Okay. I will chuck this again. I won't use this twice. I will throw it away when it comes to putting the new strings on, because it's just important to start with that nice new set to kick off with. It's a false economy to give your customer a part-worn string that's basically only going to be stretched or strained, and the likelihood of it breaking is much higher. Okay, let's just get this one on, please. I think I wound a bit too much on this time, but what the hell, it doesn't matter for now. Okay, well, I'm going to take it off anyway, so hopefully this time it won't snap. Off it goes. Hopefully this one won't snap either. Off you go. Right, let's get back on track. Where were we? Oh yes, we were working from the G back outwards, and this is quite high, so it'll take a fair bit of... Now this one is only just slightly larger than the gauge we're going to be using, so I've got to just try and wear it into a deeper slot without making it just a single deep slot. It's got to kind of come to a bit of a point. Or shall I say, we've got to gradually get it to a narrower slot rather than just one very tight wedged slot. Yeah, so it's really important to know your market. We're on the mark. Knowing your market is so important. There's absolutely no point selling to a market that isn't yours. It's something I knew when when I'm doing consultancy work. You know, what I offer to service I offer to companies is it's a particular thing, and it's either worth the value, or my clients either appreciate and understand the value and value what it delivers to them, or they don't. And if they don't, but they think it's something else, then I'm not the supplier for them. And the secret is knowing when that's the case and pulling out, not just going for the business, come what, you know, whatever, high hell or high water, and to have the I would say courage. In some ways it is courage to turn it down, but actually more than just courage, it's the sense. You know, there's nothing good about chasing the wrong customer. And actually, same with guitars as with corporate work, the worst outcome is that they buy from you but they don't really want to have bought from you. That's absolutely the worst outcome, because they will not be happy with what they've bought. And your experience, the truth is, it will always end up being a major hassle. And they'll regret having bought and you'll regret having sold. And it's not because either of you are bad people, it's just that your thing wasn't right for them and they weren't the right customer for you. And it's the skill is knowing it, and then the next bit is the courage to stop the person trying to buy. And it often, in my experience, it comes down to that. Sometimes in those situations, not sometimes, it's almost always, you have to be the one who has the courage to say, actually, this isn't right for you, and I don't recommend you think about buying this from me, or this service, or this product. And you know, when times are tough and stuff, and money's scarce, a lot of people don't feel equipped or comfortable to do that. They think, you know, sometimes they think the overriding thing of making money must come before everything else, and my experience is it's absolutely not the case. And that when you work out who your market is, and then you develop the courage to turn down people who aren't your market and walk away from the business, it's when you find yourself in your kind of natural niche or your groove, and that's really when it will pay off. It sounds very esoteric until the first time you are faced with a choice. Oh yes. You know, on that subject, I mean, the thing is, people who never get really clear on who their market is, what they're selling, and who their market is that they're selling it to, if you never actually get really clear about that in a disciplined way, then what happens is you never will come across that that kind of dilemma or choice point. You'll never reach that situation where you have to make that decision. And if you don't reach that point where you have to make that decision, you can't make the right decision. And if you don't ever make the right decision about turning down business that's not right for you, or, you know, turning down a customer who isn't right to be your customer, then you never get the amazing learning or self-esteem, or whatever you call it, boost that comes with it. For making a courageous, scary decision and walking away from that business, which then frees you up to do the right business. But you know, as I said, you have to be, in that case, you have to be clear about what it is you do and what it is you don't do, and who you do it for and who you don't do it for. And most people in business that I've spoken to don't know that, just still don't know that. Okay, I have to declare that having turned this into a 0.2 to 0.25 action over the first fret, having lowered this and having made sure that neck relief is correct, with strings that are currently on this, which might even be 9s, but I think they're hybrid. This thing is light as a feather now, apart from the strings. I've got to say, this is probably, thankfully, going to be an easier one. I don't think I need to do any fret leveling. It's brand new, so I don't need to clean the frets, as they're in good condition. It isn't guaranteed automatically that the new guitar has good condition frets, by the way. Quite often they can sit in a warehouse or a storeroom or whatever for months on end, and can be pretty grubby. Or sometimes you even get them come with a bit of damage where the guitar has fallen over in the packing process, and if the guitar falls over at a point at which the string hits the fret, you will have a gouge in the fret that sometimes the quality control doesn't spot. And if you have that, then it really does need basically it demands a bit of a fret level to clean it out and make it work. So in this case, none of those things apply. It's all in good shape, which is great. I'm just going to try and get these strings off so I can straighten out the ends and reuse them, because very often I'm short of a Strat length set of sacrificial strings. I seem to have infinite number of Les Paul ones, but to do that means I have to get them off the guitar, straighten out the ends, because they're impossible to feed through the body. But very useful to have, but pain in the butt to feed them through the body. And kind of to do that, I either need to spend some time boring you as I chat my way through bending these little things into shape, and it's doable, but it really is tedious. But worthwhile, because then I can label them, stick them up on a nail, latch thing, peg, whatever that word is, somewhere, and use them again. I just want to say thank you to the so many supporters on Facebook and YouTube who very kindly, on the rare occasion that somebody slags off the format of what I do and what I've done, and so many people very positively affirm the decisions or choices I've made in terms of what's right for the market that I'm interested in. And that really is relevant to what I just said, because you know, when somebody, and as somebody did a couple of weeks ago, somebody on another guitar site happened to see my stuff by being recommended by someone else, blah blah blah. Anyway, this person I must have come across and taken a quick look at my YouTube stuff and seen that I had 203 hour plus videos or whatever it is, and decided that they thought it was a crap approach and didn't like it at all, and didn't do it for them, which is cool, absolutely fine. But it's interesting that I know that this works perfectly for the market that I've chosen to do this for, and so there's no way, knowing and having the evidence to know that, there's absolutely no likelihood whatsoever that I would change it, simply because for the market I've chosen to do this for, I can guarantee you it's working, and it's not broke, so there's no way I'm going to fix it. And sometimes people, when they make criticisms, they don't realise that they make them, it's kind of a bit of an arbitrary thing, you know, they sort of look in from the outside, out of context, and they go, you know, as an outsider or looking in from the outside, I think your stuff is crap, it doesn't interest me, and then, you know, the thing I have to practice is saying to them, that's fine, absolutely fine, no problem at all, you're not my intended market, so, you know, I won't see you around, but you know, absolutely fine. And that's the truth of it. And the folks on Facebook are always very, very supportive, because sometimes I mention that's happened, and everybody is very positive and supportive of the format that I've chosen to stick to, and I really appreciate that, because it doesn't so much now, but on the occasions in the past where it's got me down a little bit, because it's often done with just a certain degree of arrogance or unkindness, it can be just slightly demoralising. If you're not feeling robust, you can get a bit bit depressed by it, and so I really appreciate your kind support and the sort of defence that some people go to on those other sites to say, well, actually it's pretty good stuff, blah, blah, blah. And the truth is, it's good if you're interested at the time, and it's not if you're not. But I really appreciate the gesture behind your support, because it's a very human one. See, things you have to think of to talk about while you're doing boring little things. Now that would, of course, that would bore the hell out of somebody. I've watched his channel and he wasted 20 minutes of my life bending some wires. I didn't. You wasted 20 minutes of your life watching me do this. This is just stuff, and it's easier than reaching up and turning the damn thing off. Now I'm just going to pull these out if I can get them out, and I'll bend the rest out later. Of course, one of the things about straightening them out a bit now is that you stand at least some chance of getting them out without tangling them all into a great big bird's nest first, and you have to still be a bit cautious about that. And then the secondary benefit is that you might just get them through the body of another guitar to use them as sacrificial strings. And if it saves 3 or 4 quid, so you're not wasting money, or sorry, not wasting nice new strings, just putting them in to get a particular job done, then it's worth it. But it's when they're curly at the end like this that they become quite difficult to work with, and I've just screwed that one up by pulling too hard, and I know this, and I've just gone and done it anyway. What a fool. So is there any way I'm going to untangle this, or have I really just totally scubbed it up for myself? I think I have done the latter. Where does the end go? So we've progressed from watching Sam undoing or straightening strings and watching paint dry to watching him untangling fishing line tangles. That would be a good video, wouldn't it? I bet those AMSR people would enjoy that. Oh no, I've got a tangled line sitting on the riverbank. I've just better sit down here for the next hour and untangle it slowly. But the downside of that is that there isn't much of a soundtrack to go with that, is there? There's not much of a good noise for untangling fishing wire. It's quite silent. I really loved finding that information about the AMSR, ASMR, whichever way around it is. But maybe gave me a lot of fun, really interesting syndrome. Don't think I personally suffer from it or have it, but you never know, it might do, because I do go to sleep most nights listening to the sounds of the sea or the wind in the trees and so on. But I think that's got more to do with the fact that I'm drowning out the sounds of my stepson, who's playing Xbox games all night long and talking isn't the right word, shouting to his friends around the world, which makes sleeping quite difficult. Right, so then we have a Strat set fully labelled and ready for another day. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of oil on here. It's new-ish anyway, but it won't hurt. And then I'm going to restring and go into the testing phase and stretching out the excess slack in the strings, and then with a bit of luck that will be this one done. And nice thing about that is, of course, is then Les gets a little bit of a refund on his total cost of these things, because it's turned out to be a little bit easier. It saved me an hour of fret leveling, polishing and so on and so on, which is nice for everybody. Okay, I'm just taking the excess oil off, job done, and we are ready to restring. So, you know, part of the thing about doing this is all the while I'm checking to see, looking for other things, seeing what comes up. Is there anything else that I spot that's out of order or that needs sorting out, fixing, putting right, tweaking? And as it happens on this guitar, because it's brand new and it's pretty good quality out of the box, there's nothing that stands out as being problematic. So I can pretty much now go straight on. But what you've seen on this setup, and some people, and in fact I know that somebody said to Les, you know, you just bought it and a friend played it and said, well, it's really nice, why waste your time taking it down? And Les brought it down anyway because you know, he knows he's aiming for as easy to play a guitar as possible, and knows that this can be improved slightly, and he's right about that. And so what I'm doing to it is the smallest, what it looks like and is very small modifications or adjustments, but ones that will make a perceptible improvement. So let me just see this. What have we got here? That is a wound string. It's very small. Yeah, so they are small adjustments, but what you'll have seen from many of my videos is that very small adjustments do make anyway large impacts. So it's not the size of the adjustments, it's about being able to know how to make them and to make them in a way that translates into a better playing action, and that's what this is about. So it's, you know, we're not looking here at pound for pound sort of hard labour for weeks on end. We're looking at, can we do the right number of little things, small adjustments here that make this play better, but better in the sense that the customer wants it, you know. And in Les's case, better is as light as is humanly possible, so that he can learn and play effortlessly while he's learning. So that's the aim, and yeah, as I say, that's how I see the brief, and that's certainly what I'm setting out to do when I'm looking at this thing and playing it and assessing what it needs. Now this one's got a bit of paper stuck to it, which is the downside of my special marking technique. And I should probably just be able to scrape it off and it'll come off. There you go. Okay, so all strings through the body. Waiting to go. Back onto the guitar. Let's put these bits out of the way. Now we're ready to wind these on and chop them a bit shorter. So yet again, Les, you'll have watched all these videos, so this will be boring for you, but if anyone's coming to it for the first time, the important bit about the stage now, and this makes just so much difference, I cannot stress enough how much difference this makes. Before I say, I guess a lot of people have guitars that don't stay in tune, okay, or keep going out of tune, and a lot of people explain that to themselves and are helped to explain that to themselves by professional guitar techs and so on, in various ways. And some of the things people say are, well, it's a cheap guitar, well, the tuners are crap, well, the tremolo always puts it out of tune, doesn't it, and so on and so on. And there's lots of people, depending who they are, where they live and who they talk to, everybody will have a different excuse is the wrong word, but a different explanation for why the guitar just won't play in tune. But the truth of the matter is, a guitar that doesn't play in tune is not worth having. It's just no point. It's horrible to play, and you know, you might as well not have spent a load of money on it. So given that of all the things that will ruin the enjoyment of a guitar, being out of tune, not being able to get into tune or not staying in tune while you're trying to play it, is clearly number one. You can have, if you get a really cheap guitar that stays rock steady in tune, you can have a great time with it. You can play any tune you want. If you get a £2,000 Fender custom shop guitar that will not appear to either stay in tune or for some reason it won't play in tune, then you just bin it. You'd do better off with a thing from a charity shop like my little blue one that cost 10 quid that Malcolm loved playing this morning. So not being able to be in tune is the most important thing in a guitar for me, really, probably for anyone, if we're honest about it. Anyone who's interested in music, that is. So So then you have to ask, well, what are the things that stop it being in tune? And the misconceptions are many. One is that it's the tuners. So everybody says, oh, well, it's a crap tuners, I better replace them. Or people say, something to do with the guitar, it's a budget guitar, I better save my money and get an expensive one, because then it will play and stay in tune. Or people say it's a tremolo, I must never use a tremolo, I'll block it off because that way it will stay and play in tune. There's none of those things. There's absolutely none of those things. The chief culprit to staying in tune or not is the amount of unreleased slack stored in these strings. Simple as that, from that end to the far end through the body there. This will give up its slack as and when you put the string under pressure through playing it, through putting your tremolo on it. Right? It's not the tremolo that's putting the guitar out of tune, it is the slack in the string coming out. Right? That's the number one thing that will put your guitar out of tune. It's got nothing to do with the tuners, nothing to do with the tremolo itself, it's to do with the slack. If you don't take the slack out of these strings, it will continue to release over a year, even 2. I've got guitars people gave to me where they played it for a year, had it on off and on the peg, just played it, put it back, gave it to me, and the day I got it, I will pull the strings and it will detune. Not because the tuners have wound themselves back miraculously, they don't. Even lousy tuners that we all hate like that, right, will not go backwards when they're under load. Right? The gearing just doesn't work. You can't translate these big forces, cannot translate into the gearing force of a tension pulling this way to turning this whole thing backwards. It just doesn't happen physically, mechanically. So what we think about these being crap, they're only crap because they might be a bit gritty or they may be a little notchy or whatever. That's what's crap, but they do not undo. When you get a guitar, even one that's a year old, and you pull the string really hard and it goes out of tune, nothing is wrong with the tuners, nothing is wrong with the tremolo. You've just unleashed a bit of stored up slack, and you choose to do it, great, you know what it is. If you don't know it's in there, you can guarantee you will play that guitar for 2 years, and every time you bend a string in your band or whatever you're doing, it'll go slightly out of tune. That's the number one culprit, okay? And it's nothing to do with time, it's to do with whether or not this string has given up its unreleased slack or not. The second culprit, believe it or not, is the nut slots. If those are sticky, what happens is you tune it up, turn the thing, ding ding ding, it's in tune. Let's for argument's sake, say you've taken out all the slack in the string, so that isn't an issue. Right, you'll tune it up and the string will wedge and stick in the slot, right? And what you'll have is an unequal pressure. Because it's stuck, you'll have a higher pressure. You may have a higher pressure there, for example, and slightly lower pressure there. If that's the case, when you pull hard on this by bending a note, it overcomes the resistance here and it will pull that extra bit of slack back through, and this will go out of tune, right? And that will happen continually if these nut slots are too small for the string and they are gripping it. That's the second culprit in being not staying in or playing in tune. The third culprit isn't even to do with tuners, it's not to do with tremolos, it's not to do with the slack in the strings, it's not to do with the gripping of the slots, it's to do with the depth of the slots. And if the depth of the slots isn't great enough and you have an action here, actually I'm just looking at this, this is a brand new guitar and there is some wear. I just spotted some wear on these first frets. Wow, okay, that's interesting. I'll point that. Les, if you're watching this, if this really is brand new, somebody's been playing this because this has got wear notches a little bit. I didn't expect to see that. It's not bad at all, it's not going to affect it, but it's definitely not a guitar that hasn't been played. How weird. Anyway, yeah, the other culprit, and this isn't about actually going in or out of tune, it's about whether it plays in tune, right? And if the action of the strings over the first fret is greater than about 0.4 to 0.5 of a millimeter, what you're going to get is you're going to get, when you press them down to make open chords down here or press notes, fret notes, you have to push so hard to make the string touch the metal that what happens is it bends the string slightly sharp, and you get the notes you're pressing are sharp compared to the open notes all around you, and it makes an unpleasant, unholy noise actually. And if you're musical and you've got a delicate musical ear, I mean sensitive ear, and you're good at telling about when something's just slightly out of tune with something else, then you will really notice it. And it will make the guitar, tiny fraction of it, a tiny bit high, and it will make the guitar feel to you impossible to get in tune. You won't know it's to do with an intonation issue down here. It's the number one. It's far worse an issue than even if the saddles at the far end were all akimbo, right? That would by and large sound mostly in tune, even wherever these are. That's such a small amount of effect on the overall playability. Whereas if this is half a millimetre too tall, or even a third of a millimetre too tall, this will knock your playing out of tune, and you will never find out what it is until somebody tells you what I've just told you. So the culprits of being out of tune, forget the tuners, forget the tremolo. They're perfectly good pieces of equipment. Culprit is unreleased stretch. Second one is gripping nut slots. Third one is too high an action over the first fret, which is why I do everything I do. And this is why when I come to restring a guitar like this, I'll show you what I do. First thing to do is we want to lock the string in, and if we can, we want to wrap as little extra string around here, so you don't want all of this wrapped around. So as a rule of thumb, I push it through, hold it taut, and then drag it back about a fret and a finger's worth. Then start winding it right from there, and I hold the taut string and make sure as I go round, the loose string goes under the held string on the first trip round. As it comes round again, I keep the held string taut, lift up the loose string, and this time I guide it so that as I'm doing it up, the held string goes under the loose string. So we've got one loop under and one loop over and one loop under. And that's from 1 fret's worth and about a finger's worth. So that is as little string as I can possibly get away with putting onto the roller capstan. No, it's called a post. It's got a really good solid hold. It's not going to slip. By the way, I said that the tuner doesn't unravel. It doesn't, but occasionally, especially on the unwound strings, the plain strings, if you don't put enough grip on there at all, they will unwind themselves. The thing won't spin, the string will just slide off. So we get up to here, back a fret and a finger, start winding, keep it under tension, guide it over the loose string first. As it comes round, keep it under tension, push it under the loose string second, and then there you go. And I do all of them like that, including the bare ones, and then they are all locked off for the relatively the smallest safe amount of material. Now, why am I doing that with as little as possible? Because that wound string on there can hold unreleased stretch, and will over time will try to release it whenever it wants to, usually, and it's usually when you least want it to, like in the middle of a set when you're playing live or something like that, or just when you're at home and you're sick and tired of having to stop and retune because you just can't get the damn thing to stay in tune. So it will, rule number one is it will release that stored up stretch, the natural stretch that can only be taken out by physically taking it out. It will release it, and it will release it usually when it wants to. And I think I quoted in the last video, be like President Bush, we're going to release this stored up stretch at a time and a place of my choosing, not at the time and the place of the stretch's choosing. So it's a bit of a macho Gulf War type of thing, and it just means that you can guess that once I've strung this, we're then going to go into quite a lengthy process of wringing the natural stretch or slack out of these strings, and it takes about 20 minutes to do it properly, at least 20 minutes actually, possibly a bit longer. But when you've done it, you will start the day with a set of strings that stay essentially in tune. Now on a guitar which is hard-tailed like this, that's pretty good anyway, because you can just get playing it and beat the hell out of it, get on stage and have a great time and everything's cool, stays in tune. But you really notice the difference is when you've got a tremolo set up and working, and for the first time ever, probably, if you do it this thoroughly, you will find that from the moment you start playing, you've got a tremolo that stays in tune no matter what you do to it. And it's not a bloody expensive Floyd Rose with millions of locking nuts. It is a good old-fashioned 6-screw, even a floating 6-screw or a floating two-point fender style thing. It will stay in tune, and I've taken great pleasure in the last couple of months actually demonstrating that for good customers who have come to me for multiple guitars, and at a certain point they, for example, Les is one of them, and Ian up in Glasgow is another one. I've had the opportunity to say to them, okay, look, you're buying a Stratocaster from me, or I'm setting up a Stratocaster style guitar with a tremolo for you. Would you like me to set it in a fully floating mode? And there's always a reticence or a hesitance about it, saying, well, I don't want it to go out of tune. And isn't it the case that they always go out of tune? And I've said to them, well, let me set this up for you and show you, and according to the principles I just talked about, I can bleed out all of this stretch. As long as I make sure the nut slots are perfect, and so on and so on, then I can give them a tremolo that is just flawless. And it doesn't have to be Floyd Rose. It's a good old-fashioned synchronized tremolo system like on the Strats, and it will work and play without going out of tune. And it is all down to the string stretch. And the reason why it's good to have this video is that, for example, Les, you're going to at some point change the strings again. Ian, same thing, you're going to change the strings. Having heard my kind of take on this, then I really encourage you to take that half an hour when you change the strings to bring out all of this stretch, because that, if you don't do that, your tremolo will be awful, because it's not the tremolo, it's the strings. So how do we do it? Well, we just put them on loose to begin with, and then we grab the first string, and I recommend that you use your thumbs and forefingers, and the idea is you're pushing like that. It's like a dance, bad 70s dance I might add, but so you're pushing, the fingers are pushing the string back against the two thumbs, so this is an anvil, and you're stretching the strings over that anvil, okay? And you go all the way along the string, and you use quite a bit of force, and you can do, because you're not going to break this low E, and because you're not stretching it over the saddles. It's not so bad on a Strat style guitar. On a Tune-o-matic bridge they're quite sharp, but because you're not pulling it over the saddles or the nut, you're not putting those points under any major stress, and the string can take quite a good stretch in over your fingers like this. So go up and down the string. When you get to the headstock end, stretch as much of the free string as you can. A bit fiddly, but get in there and do it. Alright, we're going to switch to the D string now, so just get right in there. And before I go down the length of the D string, stretch the spare bit over the top there, and then just keep on doing this. Now I can feel, as I'm doing this, I can literally feel the strings getting slacker. They were loose before, but now they're flopping. And then I start at the far end, bridge end in Wales, come all the way back up here. Stretching, get to the long length of string. Just, I know it's not easy to bend it, but just do whatever you can to take out that extra bit. Even if it's, don't pull it against the string trees, they're quite sharp, they're a bit primitive. I'm interested in this wear on these first frets. Depends how long you've had it, Les. I know you've been playing since February. It depends how much you've played this guitar, but I'm surprised to see a little bit of wear in it already. So I guess it partly comes down to where you bought it. It might have been on someone's shop window or on the shelf, and people may have played it. I don't know. Okay, so I've done the first stretch. Often you get black lines on your fingers. Now the first time now is going to tune it up. first tune up. So we've done one lot of stretching so far. So I'm going to now just go back to the space above the nut and give these another pull. Again, this is, remember, if you do it this way, you are pressing down on the nut, which is not exactly sharp, but just be conscious that you're pressing against a pivot point. You know, you don't want to snap it. So that's a little bit there, and I'm going to run down all of these again. If somebody says, oh, I've wasted half an hour watching strings being stretched, the length of time I do this and talk about it in this video is commensurate, as they say, with the importance of doing this and the amount of enjoyment it translates into when your guitar is playable from the outset. You can just get going and enjoy the playing. And what I'm trying to do, I suppose, with real life guitars is to minimise all the other factors that get in the way of enjoying playing. So you don't have to fight to play bar chords, you don't have to play out of tune guitars with intonation problems, you don't have to waste all your energy holding down strings that are miles high because the underlying frets are all uneven and stuff like that. It's about how to make a guitar that you can almost forget you're playing, because what you're really doing is you're communing with the music. That's what you want to be doing. See how much flatter that is? That's working hard to pull out that extra stretch. Now you know full well that if I do it again it's going to lose more, it's going to detune more. Oh yeah. I love it. Okay, but I'm going to do it again. Sorry. And then once I've done this third, that's skimping it a bit, but let's say I do this third hard dedicated stretch. And once I've done that, I'm going to tune it up again, and then I'm going to stretch, play as many bends as I can possibly get away with, oops, get that in its groove. Yeah, bend it and do a few more pulls in different directions, and then I'll be pretty confident that it's ready to play. And the nice thing is if I was selling this, I could put this now in a box, providing the tuners are not kind of knocked around in transit. But if I put it in a box and it's held pretty much in condition, I can guarantee this is going to arrive, and that when my customer takes it out and plugs it in, sits it on their knee and plugs it in, it's going to play in tune straight away. And that is that's a really confidence inspiring thing, and it's rare. See? So some people might think that because it's going detuning each time I do that, they might think it's something inherently wrong. Every time you pull it you're going to turn the tuners and it's going to go out of tune. It's not. It's going to get less. It's less each time. In fact, the E didn't go down at all there. Top E. Okay, so let's say I didn't want to do more of those bends. I'm now going to do some pulling it up a little bit at a time along here, making sure I'm not pulling it against the nut particularly. Get the last little bit out of these strings, and then I'll do some bends on the fingerboard, and we'll see where we go. So these are quite forceful. I'm pulling really hard on the length of the string while supporting it a bit. Tiny bit now. I'm hearing a tiny ping. In fact, it could be, I'm going to put a little bit of grease underneath the string tree again. I don't think it's the slot. I think the slot's big enough. Yeah, it's pinging. It's not a problem with the tuning. It's just a tiny little bit of yeah, it's a crude little piece, this string tree. It's really not a high-tech thing. You might be better off getting a little roller one and putting it under there. I'm not sure I got any, but a little Fender roller tree is much better than this thing. This is too long. It's too easy to trap the string under there and for it to drag against the kind of sharp edges of this little butterfly thing. Okay, so pretty much, apart from now a few really strong bends, in different places. Ow, God. My fingers are so soft. There you go, pretty much dead on. So 3 big bends, some up and down stretches and some finger bends, and we've got a guitar now that's stable in its tuning. And even if you do get a little bit more slack eventually creeping off these bits of stuff here, it'll be so small it'll hardly be noticeable. It'll be a completely acceptable amount of detuning or retuning. You know, maybe after half an hour playing you might just go get it better to your ear and tune it, but it's now stable. And it would be stable if you had a tremolo one like Les's red one that I did yesterday. So okay, now one more part of this to do, and that's to a couple more tiny things. One is I'm going to put some, as usual, put some graphite into the nut slots. It doesn't strictly need it, but because these slots are well cut, but it's always a nice thing to know you've got a bit of extra lubrication there. No innuendos please, but you know, just yeah, just a little bit of extra help, never goes amiss. So I'm lifting all of these strings just out of the way, chucking it on quite gratuitously because I just want it to go in the slots, and then of course when I've done that I can blow away the excess with my compressed air. So that's going to help. Tiny little addition here. It's quite difficult to do. I got my grease here. I used some yesterday on Les's red Pacifica. It had the same thing, and I'm going to just blob it on the wire this time and push that whole lot under, because I found it quite difficult to push it under there in any other way. So I'm going quite wide and then wrapping it round underneath, and it drags the little bit of grease under there. And this is old motorcycle grease, well, not from an old motorcycle, but from a grease gun, and that should take the ping away from that little string tree. And because it's underneath, you're never going to get it on your hands or anything. You might do a little bit when you change the strings, but it's a small price to pay. Okay, so the final bit of the trilogy of this beautiful guitar is to yank the amplifier up onto the desk, find the tuner application, hoist up the guitar and fire up the tuner. And hopefully you might be able to see the thing as it's operating. That's the point of this thing. And then I've got the worst jack plug in the lead, guitar lead in the world. Actually, it's very stiff, and I really want something a little bit more flexible. Anyway, the birds are going mad out there tonight again. So I'm going to stand by with a couple of screwdrivers that I need just in case. I'm going to make adjustments. I suspect, being a nice quality guitar and looking at the position of the bridge saddles, I suspect this, I think it ought to be in tune. No, intonated is what I'm trying to say. I'd expect it to be correctly, more or less correctly intonated, but if it isn't, I'm going to stand by with a long-handled, no, short-handled, long-necked thing. Screwdriver, as Galeazzo would say. So I want a clean sound, probably even better on a single coil. Now the whole purpose, and I haven't really explained this in detail for the longest while, but if you're ever wondering what does intonation mean when it comes to guitar, and it kind of means that you can see on your neck that your frets grow closer together at a very, well, not predictable, in a particular way, right? So a neck of this size, the frets get closer and closer together at a dependable way. And if you took two guitars' necks from the same scale length, for example two Fender Strats, and put them side to side, they would be absolutely identical, the positioning of the frets as they went up. And the question is, well, how do they do that? What formula is it? Well, the formula is clearly a formula that says for a neck of this certain length, or let's put it another way, for a guitar of this type, okay, we're going to have a playing length of this much. So the distance between the nut and the bridge on a Fender Strat is going to be X, and you put that into your formula, and then what comes out is a mathematical progression, or a series of positions for you to measure, draw up, and then cut the slots and put your frets in. And what it means is that for a string of this length, let's say it's 648mm from nut edge to the bridge, for a scale length of 648, which we call a Strat scale length, right? It means there is the same, because of the formula, if you put in that scale length saying I want it to be a Strat, i.e. I want it to have a 648mm scale length, it will then tell you a series of measurements. The formula will chuck out a series of measurements, you build it into your production line machine, and out comes a neck that's good for a Strat type guitar. Now that's fine, and different guitars have different scale lengths, so they're intended to be slightly shorter or longer, and some very short, some travel guitars or whatever, or short scale guitars, and their frets come together at a different rate, and from a formula that chucks out a different result of where the fret should be, a different set of numbers, okay, because you put a different number in to begin with. So with a short scale you might say it's 430 millimeters instead of 438, or 410, sorry, I'm getting it wrong. Say it's short scale, it might be 610 millimeters instead of 648, so you know, it might be a little bit shorter, and you put that number in and it will make all of these a little bit smaller distance, and so that your frets, when you lay the necks side by side, your short scale neck will seem to, the frets will start together close, nearly, but not quite, and then the short scale frets will come faster in sequence than the Stratocaster frets, which will be slower to group together. And so, well, that's simple enough. So at scale length, if you're building a Stratocaster style guitar like this with a 648 scale length, you have to know how deep to drill the pocket to put this manufactured neck in, and then you need to know where to put the bridge. If that was as simple as all of that, then that would be it. But each string needs a slightly different length. So there's a basic one where you place the bridge, and then each individual string has to be adjusted to a slightly different length. And it's just a variation away from that nominal 648, for example, on the Strat. Why do they change? Why do the lengths have to be different? Well, because they're of different thickness, and that has an impact on it. A different thickness, and they're of different composition and thickness in case of the wound ones. Now, how do we know? Well, thankfully the guitar gives us a way of finding it out, and instead of measuring it and saying, well, we know for a string of this diameter on a 648 nominal scale length, then this string needs to be 648 3/4 of a millimeter. Let's now wind this back and get a ruler out and measure it. It's too small a measurement to do it precisely. But thankfully, somebody discovered years ago that you can do it using sound, or the waveforms of sound to do it. And here's how we do it. So we take any string, we tune the string to its harmonic ping at the 12th fret. Let's make this tune up. So just tune it So the 12th fret harmonic is exactly E, and then I fret the 12th fret, ping it, fret it, ping it, fret it, ping it, fret it. If this string is the right length for this neck, that harmonic ping will be exactly the same as the fretted note, which it is in this case. We tune the B at the harmonic and we fret it, and it's right. Now, I said it on a new guitar like this, and it's a precise guitar, well made, I'd expect it to be exact, and it is. This pickup is overwhelming. These pickups are actually overwhelming the capability of the amp, and I've not heard that before working on a guitar in the shed. So I'm wondering what it is about the output from these pickups that is causing just a complete sort of meltdown on my amplifier. Now, it's not suddenly just worn out and the paper shredded. There's something about this. Could be as simple as these being too close to the strings. Now, interestingly, what I do know, and I readjust this, but I don't know an awful lot about pickups, but what I do know is that the closer they are to the string, the higher the output, the greater the resistance, higher the output. Sorry, not greater resistance, the higher the output. The further away they are, the quieter they are. However, the closer they are, the more the magnets pull on the strings, which could cancel out what you're trying to do. And the further away they are, apparently the clearer the tonality of these pickups. So if you're interested in sort of subtlety of tone, the argument would say is keep them further away from the strings. Now that hasn't quite cured the thing I was worried about. There's something going on there. I'm just worried in case it's the amp that's reaching the end of its days. But anyway, I'll take that in and play it on the big beastie, and we'll put those batteries on charge. It's not a big deal, but it's an interesting point that if in general people try to sort of push the pickups right up close to the strings as high as possible, they want more and more and more and more out of their amps. But the experts say the closer you are to the strings, the more output you're going to get, but the less range of tone. So I might suggest that you back off, and you know, if you're going to pull one forward, pull it forward, possibly because you're going to get your sort of volume increase out of it that way, and that's something you really want between the front and the back pickup. But remember that the closer you are, theoretically, the less tonal subtlety there will be in the tone that comes out. So we'll see what happens on the Black Star in the house a bit later on. But there we have it. Everything thankfully intonated, so again that made my job easier, I'm pleased to say. So generally speaking, this is a very nice looking guitar, good quality, everything's nice on it. Coil tap. I've just done a very small amount of a downward adjustment on the balancing out and lowering the playing action down here, make it a little bit easier for Les to form chords, which I know he's going to appreciate. A little bit lower here, only a tiny bit, and just made sure that it plays nicely. So there we go, done. Beautiful guitar. See you again soon for another one.